Hey y'all, and welcome to the very first episode of Soul Searching with Deep South Korean. I'm April, and I am so excited and honestly a little nervous to be here with you today. I created this podcast because I wanted to make space for real, honest conversations about mental health, identity, and the journey of being a Korean adoptee, especially growing up in a small town in southern West Virginia. Whether you're here because you relate to that or because you stumbled across this by accident, I'm really glad you're here. I've been sharing a lot on social media lately, and the response has been overwhelming in the best way. But there's only so much you can fit into a reel, right? I wanted a space where I could go deeper, not just with my story, but with the messy, complicated stuff that doesn't always fit into a neat little box. As I continue to connect with people online, it warms my heart to know that my experience somehow makes someone else feel better. It has become the best way to heal my inner child. Over time, I've come to believe that when you cannot find the good, you must be the good, especially these days. Enter this podcast. I've spent most of my life feeling like I didn't quite fit in anywhere. Growing up as a Korean adoptee in West Virginia, I always felt too Korean to be considered just another kid from around here, and the only Koreans I knew were also adoptees. So they were just as lost as I was when it came to Korean culture and identity. On top of that, I've navigated mental health challenges, including CPTSD, which added another layer to figuring out who I am. I think there's power in sharing our stories because it reminds people that they're not alone, even when it feels like they are. And honestly, I wish I'd had something like this to listen to when I was younger. There is something incredible about having representation and having a space. Asians have an awkward enough time finding their place in America. Add the layer of being a transracial adoptee, and it can make things incredibly complicated. In the CAD community, we talk about a lot of factors with coming out of the fog. But one of them that I found to be most interesting is the shared loss of identity. There's a range, as with most things. Some didn't realize they were quote-unquote Asian, and most of us never received the roadmap to navigate that distinct difference in a world where racism is so very quietly prominent. Some of us still don't know who we are, caught between two worlds that never truly seem to want us. But I see us making our own spaces. I see us finding our way to one another. And it's incredible, really. While we're dealing with this very heavy subject of transracial adoption and reunification, I want to be upfront about mental health because I tend to downplay mine a lot. I hold it together or pretend everything is fine because most people around me can't handle it when I'm not able to be the rock. But the truth is, I've struggled with CPTSD, depression, anxiety, and identity for most of my life. I'm not here to be an expert or to give clinical advice. I'm just someone who's been through some stuff and is still figuring it out. I'll talk about my own experiences, what's helped me, what hasn't, and how healing isn't a straight line. Spoiler, it's messy. Get your broom. I think my least favorite part about healing is the unraveling. In order to fix something, you have to know what's broken, right? And sometimes that means facing why it was broken in the first place. Well, Let's just say that my recent divorce became a complete diagnostic session that I was not entirely prepared for. So much of my life had been built with shaky Jenga blocks. Stay with me here. And I realized that I had to demolish the top half of my tower, at the very least, if I wanted to keep building. I mean, I could have kept going, but it would have definitely made for a most wicked crash out later on down the road. Allow me to give you a glimpse of the blocks that built me. My childhood was unstable, not in typical ways. I had a roof over my head, and appearances were very important, so I always had the best clothes. But home life was quiet, and most of my memories have me isolated in my room. My dad always seemed to be at work, so my mom was the primary parent. However, she had her own trauma and mental health issues that were never properly addressed. So please keep that in mind when you hear what I'm about to tell you, because she's not a bad person. She just wasn't a good mother. I can't count the number of times I was told how I should be grateful for what she did in adopting me and raising me, and my brother, who was also adopted. She spoke of it as if it had been some great inconvenience that had been thrust upon her. There were instances when she would threaten to abandon us on the side of the road for being too rambunctious or for not getting along. And if we were home, the option was that she would leave. Looking back, I don't remember having a childhood because I was too busy being her comfort human. Making friends was hard. I felt the otherness from an early age, and my mother reinforced that by creating animosity between me and my peers, accusing them of being in competition with me and encouraging me to win. I should take a moment here for my own accountability in being a cruel child. I used personally created exclusivity to make myself feel coveted and popular, and essentially displaced that otherness onto my peers by not inviting them to my birthday parties. It was spiteful and cruel, and I am sorry for that. When I got to high school, I found a friend who just saw me as a person, and she understood me. I think she also felt an otherness of her own kind. Again, kids can be cruel. I had never had a friend like her, and I'm not sure that I have since. I had my first breakdown junior year when she died unexpectedly in a car accident, and I have been trying to clumsily glue the pieces back together ever since. So, what can you expect from this podcast? Some episodes will be just me, sharing my thoughts or diving into specific topics like CPTSD, identity, or navigating life as an adoptee. Other times, I'll have guests, people with their own unique stories about mental health, adoption, or just life in general. My goal isn't to have all the answers. It's to create a space where it's okay to ask the questions. I'll probably start by sharing my journey with my birth search, because I think it's important to get information out to other adoptees who may not realize what's going on right now. In July of this year, all of our paperwork is going to leave the hands of the adoption agencies and social services and will be consolidated at the NCRC. And if you're wondering what that means, well, I guess it depends on which train of thought you're riding. But Some people are very concerned about the possibility of files being lost in transportation or storage or just damaged. And at the very least, it's going to slow down the process of finding our files if we would make an inquiry. It could also mean prolonging your birth search. So everyone is trying to push the community to initiate your birth search by the end of February. Starting something new is always a little scary, right? Whether it's a podcast, a job, or even just being vulnerable about your story. But I've learned that growth often starts with discomfort. So here I am, leaning into the discomfort. I'd love to hear from you. What's something new you've started recently? Or something you've been scared to start? Send me a message on Instagram or TikTok. I really do read them all. I may not answer immediately, but I will. Thank you so much for listening to this first episode of Soul Searching with Deep South Korean. If anything I shared today resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, share this with a friend, or leave a review. It really helps me reach more people who might need to hear this. You can also find me on Instagram or TikTok. That's it for today's episode of Soul Searching with Deep South Korean. Thank you so much for listening and for being part of this community. Until next time.
None of this would have been possible without your support and the incredible creators who've walked this path with me. If today's episode resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, keep searching, keep growing, and know that you're not alone.